Good afternoon and welcome to our latest Semaphore Community Event for August 2024. So we've got a packed agenda today where we're going to be talking about a lot of the features added to the new products, features that include integrations with our other technologies in progress, as well as integrating with Zoom-In, one of our partners for Semaphore. So today we're going to explore the latest Progress Semaphore feature enhancements with Keith. You're going to learn how to use Corticon and Semaphore together to extract valuable insights and drive actionable intelligence from your unstructured data. Then we're going to be joined by our Zoom-In partners and discover how integrating Zoom-In with Semaphore can extend the value and reach of your taxonomy and auto classification. And then finally, we're going to find out where we'll be and how you can meet up with us this year at some of our live events and some resources that might be useful to you. And then bringing all of that together, we will have a Q&A at the end to ask the audience there. I'm leaving this up for a little bit longer here, so you can read the disclaimer if you want. But today there's going to be information about product development or significant roadmap changes and things like that. This is information in these materials should be interpreted as a commitment on behalf of Progress. If you want to read the full thing, when this goes live on demand, you can pause and look at the full disclaimer there. Let me introduce Keith Atkins, Semaphore Products Owner, and he will discuss the new Semaphore release features coming in 5.10. Keith, it's over to you.
Thank you for that introduction. Those of you who have been paying attention will have realized that Semaphore 5.8.1 came out very recently, and that's part of our long-term support release of Semaphore. Whilst we're working towards the next long-term support version of Semaphore, we will be releasing innovation releases, which allows us to show off some of the functionality that we're developing for that next long-term support release at an earlier stage. So you've got a chance to play with them and comment so that we can take on board your comments and criticisms before actually doing the long-term support release. And these innovation releases will be released as Semaphore 5.10. So within Semaphore 5.10, we are introducing our AI model building assistant that will enable you to build models more quickly. It's a really snazzy AI interface that suggests alternative labels and subconcepts from where you are in the model. To let people across the enterprise get classification results on their own parts of on their own models and own data, you'll now be able to filter classification results by publish set. Effectively means you'll be able to say, please give me the classification results from these models. This means you'll be able to share your classification server instance with other project teams and be able to filter out each other's results. Part of the drive for the next LTS version of Semaphore is the ability to fully use SCOR's mapping relationships. You'll be able to use mapping relationships to entities outside the Semaphore model in 5.12, but for now we've introduced the ability to use the SCOR's mapping relationships within models as a step on that process. And then the final chunk of the functionality that's visible in 5.10 is the ability to import and export shackle constraints more easily. Again, with 5.12, we're working towards a much easier way of using shackle to constrain your model. I'm hoping that within 5.12, people will be able to use shackle constraints without understanding what shackle is and not knowing the meaning of the word shape. But as a step in that process, we've made the import and export of shackle constraints much easier to do. So it'll make your users more productive. The AI builder will be a great boost to your productivity, and we'll be simplifying the use of Semaphore. Always something in my mind is how can we make Semaphore simpler to use for people who are subject matter experts rather than modeling experts. So just a recap on the difference between a long-term support release and an innovation release. We will fully support Semaphore 5.8, provide bug fixes and vulnerability fixes for Semaphore 5.8. For 5.10, which is an innovation release, we do not actually guarantee that the functionality will stay as it is going forward. If we've got something wrong in 5.10.0, we do reserve the right to change it so that it's got a better user interface, it's easier to use, and that might mean that some of the underlying data has to change format so it's different when it actually becomes an LTS support solution. So Semaphore 5.10 is a way of seeing what we're doing earlier and getting a hold of it and commenting on it. But 5.8 is still the long-term support version. And that's what I want to say about Semaphore 5.10. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Keith, for that in-depth look at the features in 5.10. Up next, we're joined by our colleague from across the aisle in Corticon, Jim Arsenault, and he's going to be looking at driving actionable intelligence from unstructured data with Progress Corticon. Jim, Keith, it's over to you.
Well, thanks everyone for joining. Today, Keith and I are going to show you how Semaphore can be used with Corticon to bring your unstructured data into your automated decisions. So Corticon is a business rule platform. Corticon provides you all the tools you need to automate a lot of your business decisions. It's used broadly in a wide range of industries, from applying for a mortgage, filing a healthcare claim. There's a wide range of cases where Corticon is used. Any place that you have lots of business policies, your regulatory requirements, that's where you want to automate your decisions. Now, the Corticon platform provides a rule authoring component. This gives you the ability to design your rules, verify your rules. Are there any conflicts, any gaps in them, and to test your rules. It's an integrated testing capability, so you can make sure that your rules are meeting the requirements that you set out. It has great data connectivity. You can connect to a whole bunch of different data sources out of the box. It's extensible. If there's data sources that are not provided that you need to connect to, you can get that as well. And it has tremendous deployment flexibility. So with Corticon, you deploy as a web service, in a Java or .NET application server. You can deploy with JavaScript as a serverless function, or in a mobile client or a web application. As I said, Corticon is used in a broad range of industries. This is a sample of some of the customers who use Corticon. We are big in public sector. We do a lot with state agencies and with healthcare, health and human services. We have presence in other industries as well, finance, insurance. There's a broad range of companies and organizations that use Corticon to automate their critical business decisions. So Corticon, it operates on structured data. Most organizations today use structured data in their decision processes. This could be patient information, lab results, product inventory. The characteristics of structured data is that it's highly organized. It can be easily mapped to a business vocabulary. It's quantitative, it's very precise, it's easily searched. The challenge is that structured data does not represent the whole scope of the data that's available to an organization. In fact, it's typically just a fraction of the data. Most organizations have data that is unstructured: physician notes, customer feedback, social media posts, research articles. This has all been out of the reach of Corticon for doing automated decisions until we had the integration with Semaphore. The unstructured data it has no predefined data model. It's not easily mapped to a business vocabulary. It tends to be very qualitative, very nuanced with the nature of the data. So with Semaphore, with Corticon, we can enable better decisions. The more data that you have available to you when you're making your automated decisions, the better quality that decisions you can make. The more accurate they can be, the more effective. So with Semaphore, organizations can bring unstructured data into their automated decisions in Corticon. Integrating structured with unstructured data, it allows you to get deeper insights. Having the broader view, not only the structured data, but the nuanced information. What was the patient's feedback? What was in the physician notes? This gives you better information, more broader set of information that you can use for your automated decisions. And so with Semaphore, it applies your classification rules to provide structure to your unstructured data. So Semaphore Promise, it's a semantic AI platform, allows you to extract meaning from your unstructured and semi-structured data. That's what makes it available to Corticon. You can express it as rich and consistent metadata, and you can use that metadata to improve the efficiency in your decision making. We'll show examples of this in just a moment. So for the demo today, we're going to show Corticon and Semaphore working together to automate a patient review process. So specifically, we're going to be looking at opioid data. You're looking for things such as opioid overprescription, looking for ways to put an action plan in place for an individual patient based on the clinical data as well as the physician notes and the patient feedback. So this will be using both structured and unstructured data. So in this demo, Corticon will be automating the business rules. This is for the patient review, using all the data that's available. And Semaphore will be called by Corticon to perform classification on the unstructured data. Just as an example of the structured data that we'll be using, this is a very simple patient record with patient information, prescription history, physician information. This typically would be coming from a database, from some sort of system record where you're pulling out information about the patient and their clinical history. The unstructured data that we'll be using are both physician notes and patient feedback. Now, with the unstructured data, there's lots of information here that could be useful in your automating your decisions. So there are symptoms in here. They have back pain. They're feeling anxious. There are dosage information for 30 milligrams every 4 hours as needed. There's usage information. They're increasing the dosage. They take an extra pill. And there's information about effectiveness. It doesn't last as long. It doesn't seem to help. All of this is valuable information for incorporating into your automated decisions. So at this point, we want to get into the live demo. Keith is going to start by showing you how we're classifying this unstructured data in Semaphore.
Thanks, Jim. Jim was showing off the unstructured data, such as doctor's notes, that is the bread and butter for Semaphore applications. So this is the physician's notes he was displaying earlier. So what we can do is we can take those physician's notes and feed them into Semaphore in the way that we're used to, send the classification, and we get rules back. Now, all of these data come back, all the data that comes back is from Semaphore models, and we're showing off 3 different sorts of models here. We have the subjective classification, where we're looking for evidence phrases to classify as particular concerns. So, for instance, in this case, these phrases are generally evidence of we should be looking for dependency concerns here if these phrases appear. We've taken a standard pharmaceutical model and used that to determine the ingredients that are present in the doctor's notes and work out whether they should concern us. So, for instance, here we've got opioids, because in the model we've been told that oxycodone is an opioid. So if we're looking at for opioid concern, then oxycodone is an important thing to consider here. And the final kind of model we're talking about is a facts-like model, where we are extracting the dosage rate of that the doctor has put in their prescription. So here we've got oxycodone, which is an opioid, and we've got 4 per hour, and we've also got 30 milligrams as the quantity. So we're extracting the patient concerns from a subjective model, we're extracting the ingredients and the relevant area of concern from a standard pharmaceutical model, and we're using fact extraction to grab the dosage. All of that is standard Semaphore functionality that Jim is going to show how to wire into Corticon.
So the scenario today that we're going to be showing is a patient case review. We'll be using both structured and unstructured data in this review. So what we see here is Corticon Studio. This is where you model your rules, where you validate them, where you test them. Everything you need to do to create your rules can be done in Corticon Studio. And then from here, you can publish them to either Corticon server or package them up as, let's say, a JavaScript bundle so that you can deploy them as a serverless function. Every business rules project starts with a vocabulary. That's what you see over here on the left. In here, we have what would be structured data, such as the patient information, very limited set of data because this is a demo, just their age, their name, their gender. But we also have placeholders here for what will be the unstructured data. So we've got patient feedback and we've got physician notes. Both of these will be coming in as just free text. It'll be passed in as the feedback or as the notes. And then with Semaphore, it will be building a classification record for this. You'll see this when we start running some tests in just a moment. What we do is we then take the information that comes back from Semaphore and we produce these patient insights and physician insights. So again, for the demo purposes, this just makes it easy to show you what we're doing with the data that's coming back from Semaphore. What we see on the right here, this is a rule flow in Corticon. So a rule flow, this is where you organize your rule sheets, your callouts, all the aspects that are going to become part of your decision service. The decision service is the deployed artifact. So after you model your rules, you package them for deployment as a decision service. And as I said, Corticon's got a broad range of deployment options. A rule flow could be called, or should be a decision service could be called transactionally, let's say with a single record in response to a user interaction in a website. It could be called in a batch mode. If you've got to process hundreds of thousands or millions of records, there's a variety of ways that it can be called, but in all cases, the same rule flow can be used for meeting both needs. This is a very simple rule flow. We have customers that have created decision services. We've got hundreds of rule sheets in them. So again, for demo purposes, it was working with something very simple. In here, you'll see a few of the cells that are filled in with various colors. So the very first one here in yellow, this is where we're calling out to Semaphore to classify the data. So we're using a callout capability in Corticon. With Corticon, we have callouts that we bundle, but you can also write custom callouts to interact with other external services. We'll be going to the physician notes in blue. This is where we'll be taking the data back from Semaphore, and we'll show you how that data is then being used in Corticon. Similar for patient feedback. And then you'll see the action plan, which is an example rule sheet where we're mixing both the structured and the unstructured data. The physician notes, this rule sheet is where we are taking the data from Semaphore and doing a few things with it to make it easier to use inside of Corticon. Within Corticon, rule sheets are represented as in a spreadsheet form. That's a very popular form because it's something that is familiar to users. People that are familiar with Excel and other spreadsheet type applications understand how to interact with a rule sheet in Corticon. What we see in here are two sections. There's the conditions and then the actions. So conditions are where you're specifying the what must be true for an action to fire. Each rule is represented as a column. So here you see that we see for this rule, if the classification name is area of concern and the value is opioids, then we're going to set that to true that opiates are prescribed. So that's one of the first insights that we'll gather. There are multiple rules inside of this rule sheet where we are looking at different aspects of the data that's come back from Semaphore. And what we're doing here, if we look at all of the actions, we're doing various things here of determining that opioids were prescribed, again, just based on the physician notes. We're determining how many prescriptions were in there. So this is sort of high-level insight that we're getting from Semaphore for each of the prescription. How many of these were opioids? And then we're actually going to create a prescription record. So for the information that came back from Semaphore, we'll be determining, oh, this is one of the prescriptions that this patient receives. What the drug name, the dosage, and all of that. And that's more information that we can use in the rule sheets. The action plan is a very simple rule sheet where we're looking at the structured and unstructured information that came back to determine actions. So, the scenario here is based on the clinical history, the physician notes, the patient feedback. We want to determine an action plan for how best to treat this patient going forward. In here, you'll see there are rules where we are using structured data. So, for example, the patient age or the patient gender. But you'll also see where we're using the insight information. So, here we're looking at where opioids prescribed, were there patient concerns, were there physician concerns. This is all information that came back in the unstructured data, actually, from Semaphore in processing the unstructured data. You can see the individual rules here. So if the patient is less than 18 and opioids were prescribed, and there's concerns with opioids, then where they're under 18, what we're going to do is consult with pediatric services. For different ages and for different concerns that come back, we'll be taking different actions, recommending referring to behavioral health, patient education, consultation with pain management. So what we'll be building here is an action plan based on all the data that we have available, the patient information and the doctor, physician notes, and patient feedback. What we're showing here, this is a Corticon rule test. So again, part of the Corticon environment, one of the things that Corticon really excels at is helping you get your rules right. When you're authoring a rule sheet, creating a rule sheet, there's tools there to help you find gaps or conflicts. If you have gaps in your rules, where you're missing some condition, or if you have conflicts where two rules could be triggering, say, on an overlapping age bracket, Corticon really prides itself on helping you get the rules right. Part of that is giving you the ability to create rule tests. So what we have here is a Corticon rule test with 3 cases that are being passed in. We have case 1, case 2, and case 3. Each of these represents an individual patient. We can see some of the static or structured information for the patient. We can also see the unstructured data that was being passed in. So we've got the patient feedback, so since starting on both morphine and hydrochlorone, so on and so forth. We can see the physician notes are here as well. The patient name, just more information, what the complaints were. So we have representative of 3 cases here. Now, in a deployed decision service, it could be getting called with 1 case at a time, or in a batch mode, it could be called with hundreds or thousands of cases or more to process those cases. In this case, for this test, we have just the 3 because that gives us enough to show the results of what's being done. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run this rule test. So what's happening here, it's called off, it executed all those rules in that rule flow, including the call to Semaphore. And what I got back was the structured information, the insights that were gathered from Semaphore, as well as the actions that were taken by the rule. So let's take a quick look at this. So if we start down here with the patient feedback. So this is what was returned from Semaphore. So we pass this textual information over to Semaphore, which it then classified. We get the classification information back of areas of concern. Each of them are scored. The value, or this was opioids. We get information about their prescription. If we look similarly at the physician notes, the same sort of information is returned. The insights that we got back. The prescription, the prescriptions, the type of information. There's more in here that you can see. Some of them have cases where there was concern about dependency or overuse. What we've done with this information is we then built the patient feedback and the physician insights. So we've got, if we look at the physician insights, we'll see that they're taking opioids. The opioids were prescribed. Overall, there were 3 prescriptions that were in the unstructured data. We can see the details about the prescriptions as well. So this is all information that we got back from Semaphore in classifying the unstructured data that we provided it. Now, together, we can look at this information and go, we can see the action plan that was created. So here we see for this particular patient in case 1, We consult with pediatric services, begin opioid tapering, report to behavioral health for counseling, and provide patient education. That would correspond to, if we go back to the rule sheet, we can see the different rules that fired here to help produce that action plan for this individual case or this individual patient. One of the things that Corticon provides as well is the ability to generate rule messages that show what's occurred. This is, helps you to document your rules. What were the, provide a, an audit trail, if you will. We can see here the patients that were identified. So for case 1, there were 2 prescriptions that the patient was taking, and the dosage. Again, that's all from the physician notes. Something for prescription for patient 3 and for patient 2 as well. We can see other information that was produced, as part of the rules executing. But that's the, overall what this demo is showing. When integrating this with, your, say, a back-end framework for doing the processing, developing an action plan, or performing a case review, Corticon could be called, let's say, as a serverless function or a web service from other applications, which are passing it over case information. The rules are executing and doing effectively data enrichment, in this case, developing an action plan, and then returning that to the caller, and then other parts of your solution, your platform, can execute on that action plan. That wraps up the demo. What we showed here is the integration of Corticon with Semaphore, with Semaphore being used to bring structure to your unstructured data, making it available to Corticon to do automated decisioning on, and we'll throw it back for the next segment.
Thank you, Jim and Keith. That was really, really interesting. Up next is Joe Gelb from Zoom In Software. They're going to be looking about how to extend the value and reach of your taxonomy and auto classification with Zoom In and Semaphore.
Okay, very good. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak to you all. I'm here with my colleague Jared Bestink, who is heading one of our senior solution consultants at Zoom In. We're going to talk to you a little bit about how unified knowledge with Zoom In, specifically for self-service, can help supercharge your enterprise knowledge along with Semaphore and for self-service experiences. So a lot of you in your organizations are using all technical knowledge or technical content for all kinds of different reasons. For self-service, for your products, when people have problems, also for your case agents. People are using technical information all the time in your company and outside your company for your customers and your partners. And technical knowledge is really critical for scaling your companies and scaling service across all the different channels that you're communicating with your customers, whether that be when your customers are having an issue or they need help with something, or they're just learning how to use your products, or when your case agents are answering calls with their engineers, depending on what businesses you're at. So knowledge really is critical to scaling your self-service across your organization. And that's really where Zoom In comes in. Now, fragmented knowledge, on the other hand, is very, potentially destructive or problematic in your company, meaning if content is not able to be aggregated and delivered properly to your customers, not only your representatives in your case management organization is not going to be productive, but also customers will be frustrated and just adding to your caseload and just reducing that self-service and really just reducing the satisfaction around your products. And that's again really why self-service and technical knowledge is so important. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we can deliver that content, unify that content much more efficiently, and how Semaphore technology can really help to supercharge that. Now, technical content is important in different aspects of your customer's lifecycle. From a marketing point of view, learning about your products and how they work, evaluating whether to go ahead and buy your products and then go ahead and buy them. And then once they go ahead and become your customers, learning how to implement them through help, launching them through implementation, installation guides, administration, using that content or using your products, and then maintaining those products, administrating those products, getting help when they need assistance. And then going ahead and expanding, hopefully, the footprint of your products inside the organization, and then going ahead and hopefully renewing contracts and just overall expanding the relationship and the usage of products. So again, technical information of all different types of sort is very, very important. Now, there's all kinds of different types of content in your organizations. I'm sure a lot of you are using or having technical documentation, whether it's being created in different types of structured or unstructured formats. Could be in content like in structured XML, or it could be content like Confluence or in Jira or in Markdown. Many of you might have API documentation that you need to be available. And also many of you have learning content in your LMS systems, in product assistance, knowledge articles being created in your CRM and other types of repositories, community discussions. So there's a lot of technical content all over your organization. Now that content somehow has to make its way to your customers and to your partners, whether it be in self-service portals, whether it be inside your products or in product assistance, whether it be in your support portals when people are having issues and need help, and also in your CRM systems when your salespeople don't need access to that content, or your service people need access to that content as well. So again, we have many of our organizations are complex and large. We have a lot of people creating content, and somehow we have to get that content to where our customers are looking for content. And that's really where Zoomin comes in. Zoomin is a knowledge governance platform. It allows you to unify all the content being created in your organization, making sure that the most updated single source content is being made available, making sure that there's content governance, making sure that security protocols are in place, privacy is enforced, and that people are not seeing content they're not allowed to see. For example, if I'm a customer, I should not be able to see internal content. If I'm just a public person learning about your products, maybe I don't want to allow them to see all of my content. Maybe you need to be a customer first. So the Zoomin platform allows you to unify all the content, no matter how it's being created and managed in your organization, allows you to keep that updated source of truth, allows you to have a governance, content privacy, and allows you to have an API first integration with that content. And that will become more and more important as you roll out AI and AI infused applications. Now, this is really where Semaphore comes in as well, because Semaphore allows you to create and manage a corporate-wide taxonomy, and also allows you to do auto classification. And that's where Zoomin allows you to integrate with your taxonomy to provide that framework for the governance, framework for security, framework for metadata-driven search and filtering and access to that content. And so Semaphore also allows you to do that auto classification. So once that content is brought into Zoomin, through that Zoomin integration, we allow you to go ahead and auto tag or auto classify all that content based on your taxonomy and based on your rules. And that's super, super powerful, not just from a standpoint of delivering that content into your different portals and self-service, but also as you're rolling out more and more AI applications. And we're going to show you a little bit later about how that works. Now, talking about AI, we talk about how you as an organization need to be AI ready when we're talking about technical content or technical information. There's basically three aspects. Number one, you have to make sure that your content is unified and always updated, meaning your AI applications, whether they be a chatbot, whether they be AI infused or AI supplemented self-service or support agent functionality or copilot, you always need to have that single source of truth. We all know that AI works in content, AI works in data, and if you don't have any data, if you don't have a single source of updated data and a place where your AI applications can be grounded on your content and not just content coming from the public internet, so you're not really going to have a successful AI implementation. Second thing, as we touched on, is that content governance, making sure you have that security and privacy enforced. And third aspect is having that the LLM and the AI capabilities. So it kind of ties everything together. Now, if we put all this together into how a typical AI application or AI pipeline works, so we have on the bottom left here, we have all the content we spoke about. We have all that content that's unified from across the organization, having its own tools, its own formats, its own management. It could be in SharePoint, it could be in Google, it could be in all different types of repositories. That's where kind of Zoomin comes in to unify that. Then you have, from an AI point of view, you have embeddings. That's where you're able to take the content and use the machine learning in order to create a semantic meaning around that content. All that semantic meanings is stored inside of a vector database, those embeddings. Once you're able to combine that vector database with your large language model, whichever one you're using, those feed into your AI applications. Now, in the context I'm talking about now, we're talking about self-service portals or QA bots or self-service bots, co-pilots, and different ways that we're allowing our customers to self-serve about our content and allowing our case agents and people internally to have much more effective access when they have questions and they have problems they need to solve. Now, if we overlay the problems we talked about before, again, we have to make sure that we're enforcing access to prevent users from accessing content they're not allowed to see. Again, that model needs to be driven not only from a unified knowledge point of view, but also based on metadata. And again, that's where your unified taxonomy based on Semaphore really comes in. We need to be able to identify and mask any kind of sensitive data to make sure that's not getting into your vector database and feeding into your, or being grounded in your LLM. And also, again, we need to have that unified knowledge hub, which is API based and allows that content to be fed into your AI applications. Okay, and again, having that metadata, that classification around the content becomes more and more critical. So I said a lot. We talked about how technical content is becoming more and more important, not just for self-service and for case management in your organization, but also for creating these AI applications. These applications and these self-service applications need data, and they also need more and more a governance model, a taxonomy model, a metadata model, and a way of classifying content much more effectively. That's becoming more and more important, and I say really critical for rolling out applications. I'm going to show a little bit of a demo of what this looks like, and then I'm going to hand it over to Jared, who is going to show you actually how this works with Semaphore. So just to see an example of how Zoom-in is being used for Progress Software. So Progress Software has its own self-service portal, docs.progress.com. Many of you may be using this portal. This portal is actually being driven by Zoom-in. So Zoom-in, as a vendor, we are partners with Semaphore, but we are also working with Progress to drive this technical documentation site. So if you're using the site, then you're actually using Zoom-in software and our technology all the time. Now, I'd also like to show you an example of our own portal. And this is our own portal where we're all providing our own documentation. And I'd like to just kind of do a quick walkthrough to show you how technical content comes together with AI, along with being fed with the metadata in order to show an experience. So here I can go to the Zoom-in portal and I can go ahead and learn about portals and product help and Salesforce and how Zoom-in is able to bring in content from all kinds of different sources. But I'm just going to go ahead and ask a question. For example, how do I restrict content? Now, when I click on this button, it's not only going to bring me search results, as you see here, and not only am I seeing my taxonomy on the left, where I can go ahead and based on taxonomy, I'm able to go ahead and filter content, but I'm able to see an AI-driven chatbot on the right side. So the Zoom-in chatbot here is really answering my question based on content that we have published into our portal. We're not going to the public internet. We're grounding this content based on our content, just like you would be using if you're using Zoom-in software. Now, what's happening here is because this content is being tagged and classified properly, I can go ahead and ask a follow-up question. For example, well, how about Salesforce? Meaning, in the context, I'm asking, how do I restrict content? But I want to know how I restrict content in Salesforce as well. And now, because of this content is being tagged, then the Zoom-in chatbot goes and says, oh, let me pull out the content that's dealing with Salesforce and restricting content, and it's going ahead and giving me a very detailed answer based on content, along with a very styled and useful answer here. So again, this is how we tie all these pieces together. Technical content being brought into a Zoom-in technology, being tagged using tags, which are being stored and managed in a Semaphore-based system, and how that goes ahead to drive an AI-based interface. I'm now going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Jared, who's going to show you a little bit behind the scenes how Semaphore can work with a Zoom-in product.
All right. Thank you, Joe. So in today's demo, I would like to walk you through a demo site that we have built. And the demo site is Storm software. Basically, Storm has a number of documentation and documentation published into the documentation portal. And these documents are coming from multiple sources. What happens now is if I'm on the website and I open the library view, which is basically showing us all the content that is available, I can see a number of items here. We have maybe a user guide coming from different sources. We have user manuals, etc. What we can also see is here on the left-hand side, we already have a basic taxonomy set up. So that means that all my content that are coming from various sources already have some type of taxonomy or some type of metadata. But I want to actually enhance it. I want to add more to my documentation because, like what Joe was explaining, metadata is more than just assigning user rights or making sure that the users are able to find it. It's also AI driven. The better we can describe and the better we can classify our documents, the better it is for AI to start generating answers for us. So how do we do that? So first of all, we have created inside Semaphore a taxonomy database, and we have all these items here on the left-hand side. So we have something that describes what the topic is about. We have some failures and processes, etc. A very complex taxonomy that we have here in Semaphore. Now, with all the content that we have in our documentation portal, I can actually enhance it, classify it using Semaphore. So in our concept application, I can click on auto tag with Semaphore, and I can click one or more publications. For the demo today, I'm only going to do one, and I'm going to click next. I'm able to select one or more topics, or for demonstration purposes, I'm going to select them all. What happens now is behind the scenes is Zoomin is sending information to Semaphore's taxonomy database or taxonomy classification database, and each item is now getting the correct classification. Once it is done, I can review it, and we can see all the additional items that we have on our topics. For example, looking at introduction, we can see different color codings as well. Clustering, for example, is green, and that means that the classification mechanism is 80% or higher sure that clustering is definitely something that should be added to introduction. Everything in orange, which is also configurable, has a score between the 60 and 80%, meaning it might be relevant, but it might need some review as well. As a user, I can now go into these items and, if needed, add or remove a number of items by clicking on this little X button up here. So I'm now removing items. What I also am able to do is I'm able to manually add as well items on this particular topic. For example, I can add one or more tags manually myself if they are not already here. Once it's done, once I have reviewed everything, I can review at the bottom all the tags that I have added just to make sure it's all correct. And whenever I'm done, I can start uploading it back in the system. What happens next is back in our documentation portal. This particular user guide is now getting all these additional tags, all these additional classifications coming from Semaphore, making it easier for your users, making it easier for AI to start finding content and processing content. So this is how the integration works. Of course, it's still in a concept phase, but it's really, really exciting to already see how this all comes to life and how Semaphore is actually helping us, making sure that even in our portals, our AI is even better in answering these questions. So thank you so much. And you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jared. It's a great demo. And thanks again for the Semaphore folks and Progress Software folks for allowing us to introduce ourselves to you. And really excited about the partnership and how your new features with AI-driven Semaphore functionality will go ahead and really drive this partnership forward even more. So thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. That was really good. Let me just bring up the last of the slides that we'll have for you today. So we've got a couple of things to go over just before we get into the Q&A. First and foremost, we've got our next community event, which is on October the 10th, same time, same place, and we'll have some more speakers there, and I'm sure there'll be even more product enhancements to share with you, as well as work with our partners and customers. So looking forward to that one. we're always looking for help and feedback. So, you know, a couple of review sites here. We've got Infotech software reviews, as well as Gartner reviews as well. So that'd be really good. And then we've also got MarkLogic World Tour, where we're going to be talking all things generative AI, data visualizations, and knowledge. That's in September from the 23rd to the 25th in Bethesda. So we hope that you can join us there for our first live in-person MarkLogic World Tour since 2020, I think, maybe in 2019, just before the pandemic. Finally, just before we go on to the Q&A, we really need your help. You know, we want to share your stories, your challenges, your successes that you're having in these events. We would like to know how long you'd like these events to last. How often do you want to see these events? Currently, we're doing them sort of once a quarter, but if you'd love to see it more often, then please let us know. Also, what content would you like us to cover, and who are the experts that you want to hear from? And as always, you know, make sure you're asking those questions during the chat, and also to us outside of this as well, and see what we can get featured in next events. So without further ado, let me stop sharing my screen now. If we could have all of our speakers join us on camera, that would be great. Let's get through to some of the questions that our audience have. There we go. Keith, Joe, James, brilliant. Okay. Well, we've got a couple of questions from the audience here. I've got one question here before we dive in. This is, how do you or who designs the output features like dosage concerns, actions? Is it a developer or are they auto-generated? And I think that goes to the Zoom in guys. I think that question came in by the Zoom in. So, Joe?
I actually think that was asked before my part, so it probably goes to
okay. Just before. Okay, fine. So how do you, or you know, who designs those output features like the dosage concerns, etc.? James and Keith.
It's a design question. When you're designing the entirety of the Corticon Semaphore solution, you need to have a think about what data you want to extract from the documents, and therefore build up the Corticon solution to use that data, and the Semaphore product, configure the Semaphore product to generate that data.
Yeah.
So it's a question of designing the data model for your solution.
So I guess that's a mixture of your data experts, the knowledge experts, and then those kind of business subject matter experts in your organization as well. Yeah. And what's the underlying LLM that was used within Semaphore? And can you elaborate if there's a mechanism to prove that there are no inherent biases?
Within Semaphore 5.10, we're given the ability to connect to the Azure OpenAI engine. So it's not a Progress generated LLM. We're basically making the ability to tap into the Azure one, and as time goes on, we'll give more options there. Is there a mechanism to prove that no inherent biases? No, because there are almost certainly inherent biases because it's an LLM.
Yeah.
So play and let's find out.
Yeah. And I guess that's that human in the loop approach that we're taking to this. We're not relying solely on the LLM to help us build the model, but we're also looking at the human beings behind it to add their take onto it as well.
Oh yes, the whole point of the Semaphore framework is that you've got the human in the loop. The human knows best whether what's been suggested is sensible or not.
Yeah. And there was a suggestion to have a single source of truth on that. Joe, I definitely think this is you, because you answered this one already, but I just want to bring it into the chat. However, in many organizations, it's impossible due to having regulatory restrictions, etc. How do you suggest to design such a system around such restrictions?
Right. So that's definitely very common that many organizations are large. There's different types of content, and as the questioner pointed out, there's often different types of regulatory considerations, regulations around people who are creating that content, how that content is being stored, who has access to that content. And so that's really where I think this unified knowledge concept becomes very important, where on the one hand, from a technical point of view, being able to connect to these different sources, but on the other hand, being able to use metadata and understanding the content that we're creating in such a taxonomy model, such as in Semaphore, and be able to understand from extraction, understand what personal information is there, and also understanding who has access to this content and who doesn't. Making sure that private content or restricted content does not get into our LLM or does not get passed off through an AI app or any other app to someone who doesn't have access to that content. These are all things that are very much in consideration and definitely need to be considered when building these types of these implementations and applications. It's a great question.
It's interesting, isn't it? Is that a lot of these things, when people talk about generative AI and LLMs, actually make people go back to the very beginning and go, okay, what is your data? What does it look like? Who should have it? Who shouldn't have it? What should be exposed? So on and so forth. So yeah, it's good.
A lot of those basic problems do not go away. In fact, they're a little bit exasperated because now people are almost expecting, give me a chat and give me an answer. While, you know, being able to link back to the sources, making sure that we have control over that content, and to have that level of confidence that we're not passing off confidence. From a legal point of view, we're hearing that all the time. These types of issues.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure there's some questions for people as they explore these tools for more and more use cases across the organizations as well. So one question that we had is, you know, like, how long does it take to set up like a unified knowledge of your business, of the world that you exist in a typical company?
Yeah, so typically there's different repositories that need to be connected to. So in our case, we have many different out-of-the-box connectors. From a technical level, it's relatively simple. It's a matter of going in and understanding the metadata that's coming from those systems and mapping them. Again, if you have a global or an enterprise level taxonomy, then that definitely helps. But being able to take that and do a mapping. But totally, you can have a system like this up in place and delivering content inside of a self-support system within weeks. Definitely prototyping it within days. But these days, it does not have to be a months-long project anymore. The technology is pretty well placed, and a lot of people are already implementing these systems.
Yeah. And James, obviously both the Corticon and Semaphore have got rules, you know, they're based on the rules that you apply. So what's the differences between the two technologies then?
So in Semaphore, you're defining your classification rules for your data, how to go from your unstructured data to actionable data. Within Corticon, you're defining your decision logic. You know, what are your rules for approving a benefit claim, or for processing an application, say for a mortgage. So in both cases, the tools enable a business user, a domain expert, somebody that understands the domain that you're developing a solution for, to define the rules, but they're rules for solving to meet different needs. So.
Yeah, so one more on the sort of data, metadata, knowledge, classification side of things, and the other really on that sort of how to run the business. How am I running this business at scale using these? Yeah, okay. And so are Corticon and Semaphore offered as like a bundled solution then?
So today they're offered as individual products. So you would buy them individually from Progress, but if you have questions on integration between them, the Progress Professional Services could help you with any sort of integration aspects.
Yeah, no, great. And Joe, how can your solution zoom in? How can it help us leverage Gen AI?
Yeah. So Gen AI, we all understand more and more that it really has to be grounded on real data. A lot of our organizations, we want our AI applications to be grounded in our data, not public data. Okay. So with the unified knowledge model, we're able to bring that content in, aggregate it, put that common governance model, and then that's what really our applications are built on. if you think about our people in our organizations creating different types of bots or different types of AI applications, what they need to do is they have to go and start finding this data, integrating with it, pulling it out, and that becomes, first of all, it's not efficient if everyone's doing the same thing, and it's a mess. And from a governance point of view, we have a lot of problems. So that's where a system like Zoomin really comes into play, where you're basically organizing, normalizing the content, or normalizing that governance model, and that just makes the AI, feeding the AI applications with our own data on the one hand, and also making sure that it's controlled and updated.
Brilliant. And Keith, how are the innovation releases going to work out for the rest of the year then? Oh, sorry, I think you're on mute there.
Yep, had to happen eventually. So 5.10.0 will be out in the next few weeks, which will have the first iterations of the things I was talking about. I would expect to get 5.10.1 out later in the year, where we'll have significant steps forward on the functionality that we're putting towards it. Whether it was a 5.10.2 or not before 5.12, I don't know. But certainly I would expect to have another innovation release out in 4 months or so.
Okay, well, yeah, there's lots of things going on with the technology. I think even just this month, you've got 5 releases there, and then more releases from Corticon and MarkLogic as well. So it's a really interesting time here at Progress. James, what does the integration between a content management system and, say, Corticon look like then?
So when you say a content management system, if the question is how to get data in and out of Corticon, there's really sort of 2 primary approaches that are taken for calling Corticon. One is to pass all the data in at the point of call. That's actually a very common usage pattern where you want to minimize the number of data connections. You have legacy systems. You want to aggregate the data to call Corticon. The other is to have Corticon to go and retrieve the data itself. So you could pass in, say, a partial data record, and Corticon can access your data sources, your data stores, to pull in additional data to supplement or augment that record, so you can make the decision processes that you bring the data into the decision process that's being called. Another way you can use Corticon is to pass in, say, just seed records. So you want to process some range of patient IDs, let's say. That's a common use case for, that's basically how you would do batch processing with Corticon. So it can be transactional, it can be batch. You can pass in the full data, partial data. Corticon can access all your data sources either through the bundle adapters that we have or custom adapters that you need to that you want to add for bringing additional data into Corticon.
And just before we finish up with Joe with one final question, what platforms does Corticon support?
So Corticon, it runs on any of your sort of Linux platforms as well as on a Windows platform. That's from a rule authoring perspective, you can do it on a Windows platform. But for deployment, you can deploy to we have JavaScript deployment. So whether you want to deploy to IIS, to a JBoss application server as a serverless function in AWS, you have a wide range of deployment options for Corticon.
Okay, and then one last question. We're going to squeeze it in just before the top of the hour. But how does unified knowledge differ from a federated search?
Yeah. So when you think about federated search, so it's basically indexing content from different sources and then creating search results and then redirecting a user to wherever that answer lives. We're talking about AI applications. We need to have access to the actual content, not just a bunch of index words. We also need to have access to some kind of information about how that content is structured or laid out, so we can give better answers. We have to give better access to meanings inside of images and meanings inside of other type of media. So from ability to not just have that data to round on, but also be able to display it in in a high fidelity way can be much more important, and opposed to federated search tools, which is mostly redirecting people to wherever that content happens to live, so I can click on it and read it.
So anyone that's old enough to remember a library, if you have the index card, that's great.
Yep.
Really, what you want to be reading is the book on the shelf.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly that. Okay, brilliant. Well, look, gentlemen, thank you very much, Keith, Joe, James, for all of your time today. Thank you, audience, for your questions. Yeah, we look forward to seeing you hopefully in September when from our Logic World, but if not, in October at our next community event. So yeah, gentlemen, thank you for your time today, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks very much. Bye, Philip. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.